Take a slow breath in and let it gently fall out of your chest like the last leaf of autumn drifting through a quiet evening. Your eyelids grow heavy, let your hands rest loose, and let the day slowly melt from your shoulders. Night, we are going. Far away, not in distance, but in time, to a world lit by candlelight, woven with wool and whispered to by stars tonight. We visit a high stone turret where a young weaver works by moonlight, spinning silver-dyed thread beneath the hush of sleeping. Towers our story begins at the edge of dusk as the sky folds gently from soft blue to plum, then deepens into the velvet of nighty. Castle stands alone on the spine of a wooded hill, its towers like fingers reaching up to catch the stars and high. In one of those towers, behind an arched window framed with climbing ivy, a girl sits at her loom. Her name is Leora, which in the old tongue means light. And though the halls below have long gone quiet with the servants asleep and the fires banked, lo, Leora's fingers still move she. Work slowly, delicately, pulling wool through her frame. Back and forth, a soft brushing sound like wind in tall grass. Her silver thread glimmers as it passes beneath her touch, catching the moonlight in a shimmer. Of pale gray and blue, the wool she uses is rare dyed, not with common herbs or plants, but with something called moonley, a strange pale fungus that grows only on rocks near mountain peaks. It was said in old books that moonley glows faintly under the stars, and that if gathered under a waxing moon, it could be boiled into a dye that makes thread gleam like light. It's Leora. Learned this from her grandmother, who spun stories with her hands as well as with yarn. She told Leora that such thread, when woven with care, could carry dreams across great distances, even to those sleeping far away. So every night after the castle sleeps, Leora climbs the winding stair to her turret room, brings her basket of silver-dyed wool, and begins again. The loom creaks softly, a wooden sigh in the stillness, and her breath matches its rhythm in and out, as if she too is being woven into the night outside. Her window, the stars are beginning to bloom one by one, each like a tiny lantern hung just for her. The air is cool and clean and carries the faintest scent of heather from the hills below. Sometimes an owl calls from the woods, its voice low and patient, as though it too is watching, waiting. Dream Leora hums as she works, not a song, just a thread of sound, gentle, slow, a lullaby without words. She thinks of her brother far away in the southern valley, serving as a page in a lord's court. She misses him, his laughter, the way he used to bring her flowers with the roots still attached, mud trailing behind on the stone floor. So each night she weaves a little more into the cloth, a memory, a wish, a dream. She believes that the silver thread, steeped in moonlight and warmed by her hands, will carry those thoughts to him through the quiet folds of sleep. Below her the castle dreams to its walls, thick with centuries, its stones worn smooth by rain and time. There are stories in the beams, in the cold hearths, in the spiral stairs, where old kings once climbed by torchlight, but none are so quiet, so soft as Leora, weaving girl, a tower of stone, a loom that sings to the night. She learned the craft not from books, but by watching her grandmother's hands, the way they moved like water, sure and slow, how they never rushed, how they listened to the wool, not just pulled it. Leora believes the thread listens to, that it remembers every touch, every whisper, every hope, and so she never hurries. She moves in a steady rhythm, left to right, under, over, pull, tighten, breathe. Motion becomes a part of her stillness, a ritual, a sacred act of dreaming with her eyes open. There is a candle burning nearby, its flames small but strong, casting a golden circle around her stool, and loom. The light flickers gently, making shadows dance along the stone wall, shadows that look like wings, like falling leaves, like tiny spirits come to listen outside. A breeze stirs the ivy on the window. The leaves rustle like the pages of a forgotten book, telling stories only the wind can read. Leora looks up at the stars, and her eyes softened. She wonders, do they look down and watch her the way she watches them? Are there others in other towers, spinning threads of starlight and memory, reaching toward each other across the sky? Perhaps somewhere a boy sits on a narrow cot, a fire burned low beside him, and as he drifts toward sleep, he dreams of a thread, shimmering silver, moving gently through the air like a ribbon on the wind. He dreams of laughter, of muddy flowers, of a sister's voice, humming softly in the dark hand. Perhaps he smiles back in the turret. Leora lays the woven cloth across her lap. She runs her fingers across the threads, feeling their warmth, though the air is cool. She places it gently in a cedar-lined box next to the other cloths. She has made each one a letter, a lullaby, a silent poem for someone far away. The candle flickers low now, its wax softening, its flame dipping slightly with the draft from the window. Loom is quiet, the night deepens, and Leora stretches her fingers sore but satisfied. She stands, wraps a shawl around her shoulders, and walks to the window. Stars above seem to pulse gently, as if breathing with her, and in that soft rhythm, her heart slows, her mind grows quiet. She closes her eyes just for a moment and lets herself imagine the silver thread floating through the air, carrying her dreams like a whisper through the sky. She, still there, standing by the window, the loom behind her, the tower around her, the stars above. Slowly, gently, she lets go of the day and lets the quiet carry her into night, into peace, to sleep. The sky has grown darker still, a deep blue velvet stretched above the world, pierced only by tiny silver sparks. Each star glows softly, not with heat, but with memory. In the turret, Leora sleeps now, her head resting against a folded woolen shawl. Her breath is slow, steady, light, as a feather drifting on a breeze. The loom is quiet, but not silent, for wood remembers motion, and even in stillness there is the faintest echo, a soft memory of rhythm woven into its grain. Outside, a new wind is rising, cool and sweet, carrying with it the scent of pine and riverstone. The trees below sway gently, their branches rustling like the whispers of old stories, the kind told by firelight in kitchens filled with spice and warmth far away in a glade beyond the hills. The moonlight glows, faintly nestled between mossy stones. It waits quietly for the hands that will gather it under the next waxing moon. Few know the places where it grows, even fewer know the dye it makes. But Leora's grandmother once journeyed there, wrapped in a wool cloak. In silence, she plucked the pale fungus at night, pressed it into cloth, and returned with her fingers stained silver. That knowledge lives now in Leora, a quiet inheritance, not written but felt. The sun is still hours from rising, and the stars are thick like scattered salt across the sky. Down in the great hall, the embers in the hearth sleep too, curled low beneath the ash. A hound lies beside the stones, its paws twitching softly in dream. The castle breathes in time with its people, slow and deep, its stones sighing under centuries of memory. But in the turret, as dawn inches closer, Leora stirs. Eyes open slowly, still wrapped in sleep, she sits up, stretches her fingers, and smiles at the quiet loom beside her. She does not speak, but her eyes carry a soft joy, as if the dreams she visited were kind. She lights a new candle, its flame small but sure, and the shadows retreat from the corners, leaving behind only the soft sound of morning silence. She pulls out a new skein of wool, carefully dyed from the moonlight and gathered in early spring. This one is paler than the last, almost like frost, with hints of blue and lavender hiding inside the silver. She threads it through the shuttle, guides it across the loom, and begins to weave once more. There is no need for speed, only presence. The sound returns, gentle and hypnotic, the brushing of thread, the wooden creak, the breath between each pull. Outside, the horizon blushes faintly, a soft promise of light. World does not wake with a shout, but with a whispering. The nearby village, a baker stirs his coals. A mother rocks her child. A cart creaks along the dirt path beyond the gates. But here, above it all, Leora weaves on. Her thoughts wander as they often Dew carried gently by the rhythm of her hands, she remembers her grandmother's lap, how soft it was, how it smelled of lavender and spun wool. She remembers stories told in low tones about the ancient weavers who spun star maps into cloaks so the sky would never forget their names. Some said those cloaks were real, worn by dreamwalkers, and kings of old. Others said it was just poetry. But Liora, sitting here, silver thread in hand, believes such things are more than legends. She believes the thread. Remembers she believes the stars listen, and that perhaps every thread she spins is a bridge from this quiet turret to something much bigger. She glances again to the window, where the stars still linger, stubborn against the growing light. Her fingers pause, and she listens, not with her ears, but with the still part of herself, the part that feels the loom, the moon, the quiet ache of longing. Then she continues, steadier than before. Its strand moves with care. Each line holds a shape, not of image, but of intention. She is not just weaving cloth, she is weaving a night sky, one that someone somewhere might wrap around themselves in dream. She works until the candle burns low, until the gold fades into blue, until the stars retreat behind the coming death end. Gently she folds the cloth and places it in the cedar chest. Head smells faintly of pine and lavender, and of something older, a kind of hush you can only find in places where no one speaks too loudly. She draws the lid closed and rests her hand on top. A quiet moment, held still like breaths. The morning bells ring from the chapel tower, calling the castle slowly into life. Liora rises, wraps her shawl around her shoulders, and descends the spiral stair. Her feet make no sound, only a soft brushing of wool on stone. In the great hall, servants begin to stir a fire, as rekindled bread begins to bake. But Liora passes through like mist, moving gently to the kitchens, where she is greeted with a warm cup of milk and honey. She drinks slowly, feeling the warmth move through her chest, down her arms, into her fingertips. No one asks where she has been. They know she weaves, just as her grandmother did, and her mother before her. Is understood quietly that some things are not spoken of, but honored later. That day she will walk the gardens, gather herbs, mend clothing, but the thread will wait, and the loom will remember. And when night comes again, and the castle exhales into sleep, she will climb the stairs once more, for there are still stars to catch, and dreams to send, and cloths to weave from silver and silence. The day passes gently, as days in quiet castles often do. Sunlight drapes over stone, golden and still touching ivy leaves, warming window glass, dancing on the edge of woolen blankets laid across beds. Liora moves through it softly, like a shadow made of light. She carries a basket of mending to the east wing, where sunbeams collect like sleepy cats on the wooden floor. She repairs a torn hem, a fraying sleeve, always with care, never in haste. Even these small stitches, she believes, hold something sacred, for thread-like memory binds things together. The castle hums with soft life, feet on old flagstones, laughter caught in corners, a lute strummed somewhere in the lower halls. But Liora keeps mostly to herself, not out of shyness, but out of reverence. She listens more than she speaks, watches more than she acts, as though saving her voice for the night when the loom awakens once more. In the herb garden she gathers lavender, a handful of rosemary, some sage for drying. The smell clings to her fingers, earthy and calm, reminding her of her grandmother's hands, how they always seemed to carry the scent of things that grew. She tucks a sprig of dried lavender behind her pillow, a small ritual, quiet and steady, to help sleep arrive gently. When twilight brushes the windows again, softening the corners of the castle, cooling the air, she knows it is time. She returns to the tower, to her place beneath the sky. The stars arrive slowly, like old friends, one by one, until the sky is filled with light. She opens her cedar chest, selects a new bundle of wool. This one deeper in tone, silver brushed, with hints of plum, dyed with moonly. It harvested under a lunar eclipse, rare, precious, almost violet. In the right light she threads the loom, inhales, and begins. The rhythm is familiar, her hands know it well, a choreography of touch and timing, of gentle pull and patient release. Tonight her thoughts are elsewhere, carried far beyond the castle walls. She imagines a young girl in a distant village lying awake, curled under a thin blanket, watching shadows move across the ceiling. She imagines that girl reaching for something she cannot name. A comfort, a story, a thread of warmth in the dark hand Leora weaves for her. Each pass of the shuttle becomes a whisper, a lullaby. In thread, a soft promise that somewhere someone is dreaming of her, caring, watching, hoping. Outside, the wind rustles through the trees, sending loose leaves tumbling down the hillside. Their fall silent, graceful, like everything in this story inside. The candle flickers, casting gold along the stone. Moth drifts near the flame, then turns away, choosing shadow instead. And still Leora weaves. She remembers a tale her grandmother once told of a weaver who spun so carefully, so lovingly, that her cloth became invisible, meant only to be felt, never seen. A cloth of comfort, not decoration. The key stayed with Leora, threaded into her hands, her eyes, her spirits. So she never sells what she makes. She never displays it. She simply folds each piece, lays it in the chest, and trusts that the dreams it carries will know where to go. She weaves until her breath slows, until her shoulders drop, until her thoughts soften like cloth between her palms. Then, as always, she rises, folds the new piece with care, and sets it beside the others. Tonight, she does not sleep at once, but returns to the window. The stars are bright, the air still. In the distance, an owl glides through the sky, its wings silent, its eye steady. Leora watches it until it disappears beyond the trees, and she smiles, not with her mouth but with something quieter, something deep inside. She closes her eyes and lets herself feel the stars, not just see them, each one a point of light, a held breath, a silent message sent across eternity. She thinks of her cloth folded now, its threads still warm, and she imagines that in some far-off place a stranger will dream of stars tonight and feel held, even if they do not know why. That is enough. That is everything. She turns from the window, draws her shawl around her, and lies down near the loom. The wood creaks softly beneath her, as if offering a lullaby of its own, and soon she sleeps, surrounded by thread and silence and stars. Morning arrives gently, as if the sky is remembering how to breathe. Soft strokes of light paint the stone walls in hues of pearl and ash. The wind sighs through the open window, carrying with it the crisp scent of dew and moss. Leora does not rise immediately. She remains curled in her shawl, the loom beside her, the candle long since burned out. When she does wake, her movements are slow, not from tiredness, but from peace. She stretches, then runs her fingers across the wooden edge of the loom. A quiet greeting, a familiar hello. Down below, the world begins to stir. A rooster calls once, then falls silent again. Even the sun seems to be waking gently. Leora descends the winding stair and eats her breakfast in the garden. Warm oat bread, a cup of tea steeped with dried mint and elderflower. The leaves rustle above her, offering a lullaby for the morning. She carries no rush, no tension in her brow. The night before has left her light, as if her dreams were folded into the cloth. She returns to the tower that evening with a small bundle, not of thread, but of parchment letters, written in her quiet hand, not addressed, not signed. Each one holds a dream, a thought, a question, or a memory. She places one beneath the folds of each woven cloth, so that when someone receives it, they will not only feel the thread, but hear the voice that made it, not through sound, but through stillness. Because some things, the truest things, are only felt when the world grows quiet. That night, a storm gathers slowly beyond the hills, but Leora is not afraid. She knows the rhythm of rain and the song of thunder rolling far away. Like a giant speaking gently through the clouds, she lights her candle, adds a touch of beeswax to strengthen the flame, and returns to her loom. The thread tonight is darker, like shadowed moonlight, gray with flecks of violet and frost. It was dyed weeks ago, steeped in petals gathered at midnight, blended with crushed ash leaf and sage, and cooled under a rainwater moon. Niche thread tells a story before it is ever touched by her hands. The wind picks up, and the rain begins to fall against the turret walls. Leora begins her slow ritual of weaving. The room is warm from her small hearth, and the storm becomes a steady percussion outside the melody of her loom tonight. She weaves not for memory, nor for longing, but for protection, a cloth to guard dreams to cradle. Sleep to wrap the soul in quiet when the world outside becomes too loud. She thinks of children sleeping in barns, of travelers curled beneath carts, of shepherds resting on cold stones beside the fire. She weaves for them, for their warmth, for their comfort. Cheech. Pass of the shuttle is a blessing, each tug is a whispered wish. Sighed the wind, howls softly, not with fury, but with song, a lullaby, in a language only trees and rooftops understand. Dance still, Leora weaves. She thinks of her brother, now older, taller, his hands calloused from sword and saddle. She wonders if he still remembers the nights when they stared at the stars together, counting them until they both fell asleep. She thinks of the people she will never meet, who might one day find a piece of her cloth wrapped around a newborn, folded beneath a knight's armor, tucked into the pack of a merchant crossing snow-covered passes, and she smiles, a small, soft smile that rests behind her eyes where only the stars can seethe. Storm softens, becomes a whisper, a hush of drops on ivy leaves a slow breath across rooftops. The candle burns lower now, but still glows steady. The new cloth lies across her lap, its surface gleaming not with shine, but with meaning. She folds it, writes a new letter, and tucks it beneath the threads, then places it in the cedar chest beside the others. The scent of old wood and lavender greets her again, like an old friend pulling her close. She leaves the lid open tonight, just a little, as if allowing the dreams inside to stretch their wings. The fire in her hearth crackles quietly, throwing soft gold across the floor, and outside the window, the stars return brighter after the storm, as if they've been polished by rain. Leora lies down, her shawl wrapped around her shoulders, the loom beside her still warm. She closes her eyes and feels the pull of sleep, not as a fall, but as a gentle tide pulling her toward something deeper, something softer. She dreams of silver thread of starlight, woven into cloth, of hands far away, reaching for something they cannot name, but know they need. She dreams of comfort, of protection, of quiet joy. Shade dreams that somewhere a child wakes from a bad dream and finds a folded cloth beneath their pillow, cool and smooth, smelling of cedar and safety. She dreams that someone somewhere feels less alone, and that is enough. Has always been enough. The turret falls silent again, the fire sleeps, the stars hold their breath, and Leora, weaver of dreams, guardian of night, sleeps wrapped in the cloth of her own making. Loom rests, but only for now, because night always returns, and dreams like thread have no end.